Hey everyone, and welcome to the show. Today's guest is Michael Graham. Michael is somebody that's been a friend of mine now for about 10 years. I actually met him through my now wife, Sharmila, who was not my wife, obviously, at the time. And Michael is one of those people that just has a massive heart that gives. If you've ever read the book by Adam Scott that talks about give and take, he's truly a giver. He's somebody that has really been there for me and Shar throughout the entirety of our relationship. He's opened up his apartment to us whenever we went up to Whistler. You know, he runs restaurants and has done this for years now. And everybody that knows Michael knows him as this welcoming, just heartfelt person that you just can't deny. Like, you just feel it from him, his aura. And what we dove in here to today was to just talk about Michael's background and how he grew up, and the fact that he was adopted when he was just 2 years old, and the parents that raised him, why he calls them mom and dad, and the two brothers that he didn't know even existed until a handful of years ago, how he was able to build really amazing, solid relationships with them, and just all of the things that have impacted who he is today, now in his early 50s, where he feels like he's in this moments of rediscovering himself and exactly who he is. And we dove into, like, well, what has that journey been like? And, you know, what are you exploring? And what kind of things are you learning? How have these things impacted your relationships, you know, both personally and in business? And, you know, where are we at now? Like, Michael and I honestly had a very vulnerable, honest conversation about what we believe to be true right now, what we know to be certain based on our past experiences and our current understanding of, you know, right and wrong and everything else. And then where we are transparently still exploring and trying to figure out this crazy world that we live in and how we can be the best versions of ourselves. We actually talked about the idea of selfishness and whether or not selfishness is actually a bad thing, because there's a lot of arguments that say that selfishness is actually the most selfless thing that we can do, because of the fact that you take care of yourself first. You show up with the intent on being the greatest version of yourself first, and therefore everything around you just naturally will level up, right? And it was just a really interesting conversation that I think anybody that can resonate with what I've said so far, if that grounds for you and it's something that's you're exploring yourself, this idea of like, okay, what has life meant up until now, and what will it mean going forward? Call it a midlife crisis, whatever you want to call it. I think you're really going to enjoy this episode. So let's go ahead and give it a listen. Michael Graham, welcome to the Trevor Turnbull Show, my friend. How are you?
I'm well. I'm really well. Just living life and trying to live it better.
I know, we were just talking before. It looks like you're in a tropical garden down in Mexico or Costa Rica or something,
Well,
right?
those are places I wish I was, but that's going to come in time. And I've been to both those places, and this place where I love. So
yeah,
get back there and be in a place that's great as well as here.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe we'll end up talking a little bit about that though too, because I know it's been a part of the, you know, your story and who you are in the 10 years that I've known you. And just to start off with that, I was trying to remember back when we actually first met, and I think it was probably like 2010 or 2011.
Yeah, somewhere around the Olympics there up here in Whistler, in Vancouver.
Yeah, that's right. Of course, we have our mutual connection with Sharmila.
That's right.
And yeah, I know at that time you were running the restaurant up there in Whistler and had that awesome little apartments. And the one thing that always stands out to me is that deer head on the wall. I don't know why, but
not there anymore. It's gone. So it's, you know, things changed, and that's something that changed, and replaced it with some great artwork of my own as well as other people. So
that's right. Yeah, that's the other side of who you are. And again, we'll talk a bit about that too. Is as an artist, a creative photographer, right? You've had a lot of your works and stuff published and put into different art galleries. Yeah, well, I remember you've had some stuff up in like art galleries and stuff, even up in Whistler as well too, right?
One up here, and at least it was exposed. I didn't sell anything, but that's not the point. The point is getting across to people my vision and my passion. So
that's right. Yeah. And that's actually a good segue into just talking about the topic that we discuss on this podcast, which is I was telling you before, and we've talked a handful of times before as well. There's kind of a common theme to what I do when I'm interviewing people. And number one is that they're always people that have been a part of my life, in my life, some way or some shape or form. And they have an inspiring story to tell. And there's a quote by Brene Brown, I'm just looking at it here right now, where she talks about one day you will tell your story of how you overcame what you went through, and it'll be somebody else's survival guide. And that's been really grounding for me to kind of preface these conversations of we all have a mess of a journey that we've been through, and we have a choice on how we choose to see it. And ultimately it kind of positions itself, frames itself in our life at different points where we don't even realize some of the things we've been through and how strong it actually makes us. And it's really about perspective. And I know you have a really incredible background and story, and we'll talk through that. But I would love to just hear a little bit from you what you'd ultimately like to share on this podcast as well. What's coming up for you?
Well, I live in Worcester here, and I do have quite the story. I think it's a fascinating journey from being born to where I am now, and a lot of that is from where I'm from. I grew up in a great family of six, two, mom and dad, and two sisters and a brother, and it was always something that we knew. We were all adopted. We were adopted by not all the same, different people. So we're not all from one group, and we all have our story, and we all have our way of dealing with that. And I've dealt with it the way I have, and so far so good. And that journey has been fantastic. My parents were married 67 years until my dad passed, and it's amazing. And part of that journey was also them also being open about the fact that we were all adopted, and welcoming us and supporting us and finding our birth parents and our origins, which are really manifest who we become from when we come into the world. And as that world progresses, the environment dictates your life as well as your hereditary genes, where you came from. So I found my birth parents. They're amazing people. They've been married 50 years as well. They had me as young kids, so to speak, and the path led them to me being with my mom and dad. And I call them mom and dad as much as my birth parents are. But mom and dad mothered me and fathered me, so I refer to my birth parents as by their first names. And I can't take that away from my mom and dad. And that's no disrespect to them, and they're amazing people, and they've been extremely supportive. And out of that, I still have a great relationship with them. Through finding them, it took some time to connect, but the connection was amazing as well, the story behind that. I found out I had two birth brothers because, as I said, they got married. They've been married 50 years, and I'm quite close to both of them. And they're fantastic guys, as they should be, because they're blood. But yeah, there's a lot to balance there. There's a lot of emotions that come with it. Rejection, once again, so to speak, the quote unquote rejection, which a lot of adoptive kids go through, or people. That I never felt. I felt, my mom and dad, I was always wanted. And who knew the circumstances? And I couldn't assume the circumstances as to the situation they were in to have to give a child away. It's unfathomable to me. So it was simply a way to say hello, thank you, and is there anything health-wise I have to worry, and anything else would be a bonus. And it's just been fantastic on my end. Some trying times, of course. From the first time I reached out to them, it was about, I'd say it's a while ago, 3 years for them to reach back. They had their things to deal with, which I respected. And I just waited, and it finally came together. In that time, I formed a career that I fell into, which is the hospitality business. I love it. It's provided me with a lot of great things through hard work and determination, working a very respectful and respected restaurateur that's had places all over. And that's what brought me to Whistler. I worked my way through that. Through that, that job to where I am, where I was, and which brought me to Whistler. So it was provided me with a lot of opportunity, which is where we are now. So yeah, and that kind of turned it. I worked for that individual for 20 plus years. So I went from being a kid to going into the business that had evolved around the way this owner ran it, which kind of left me running, catching up, lost in a little way, and a pivotal change in my life from starting as a young kid to having to adjust and shift to a business that had evolved around me, but not in my circle, which I did well. And it's just been a struggle. So just trying to get through those adjustments, which at 55 is a tough thing to do sometimes to change, but I'm trying. And this has triggered a lot of things that I think were there, but I didn't recognize because everything was going so great. And so has led me in relationships as well, dictated a lot of my psyche and how I approach them, which is interesting as well. So I don't know if you want to interject here and continue some of those points.
Well, no, that's a good summary that kind of speaks to this, the elements of the family life and the love that you felt from your adopted parents, and then having your birth parents and finding out that you have brothers and sisters as well, right? Or was it just two brothers?
They had two brothers.
Yeah. So two people that look like you and have the same genetics.
Some days now.
Right? So
yeah.
That in itself is obviously something that not everybody has experienced, and it when you experience it, in your 50s or late 40s even, there's an element of oh, this is kind of cool, but then it brings you back to the childhood memories and gets all kinds of stuff going on in your head. And I know, we've talked about this before about how it impacts our relationships and the people that are in your life even too. And, what did you find in the last 3-4 years in particular, your childhood and that experience, even especially just rediscovering your family, how that started to bring up things in your relationship and how you communicate, and whatever feelings of insecurities or whatever it might be that came up for you. You want to maybe dig a little deeper into that here too?
Yeah, a combination of that and seeing where I'm from, as well as being in leaving a relationship that was it wasn't right. It was toxic, and it was me trying to fix people. I'm a very empathetic person. I have a big heart. I think some people would contradict that, but
you do. I can validate that.
So where I was attracted to what I thought were people that needed help. Now, that was me not facing what I needed. In one of them, which was quite long term, when I left that, it triggered a lot of emotions. And then I fell back into another one, not purposely, but through counseling. My counselor said, you just, you need this, and that's what you stick to. You're like, I'm going to fix this. I want to. And it's for good. It's all for good. I care about people, and that's why the job I was in for 20 years was perfect and is perfect, because I love to take care of people. And when they come in the door to dine and have an experience, I feel that my disposition and my personality is fitting to that profession. But in regards to that, it's you give and give, but you need back and or to be listened to. And perhaps it wasn't my communication skills, or I'm taking heat again as part of my personality, but staying with it, determined to make that person. Maybe it's for what I need, and it's my journey, and imposing my journey on them isn't right. Sometimes I've discovered. You have to go along with their journey and go with the peaks and valleys. And if it doesn't start to serve you, it doesn't serve you. Leave before it does you damage. You know.
Did you find that you maybe stayed in those relationships that you now can reflect back on and see that it was maybe not the right thing or not going in the right direction, or
Absolutely.
you, yeah, like reflecting back on it,
Yeah.
what was coming up for you from like your experience and personally speaking, what you were starting to discover about yourself?
I was more. I wasn't actually discovering about myself while I was in those situations because I was so focused on
Mm.
just figuring out how to make them overcome their things, which you know is wrong. It is not wrong, but it does. It has to be balanced, and you have to get fuel as well as instead of just emptying your tank all the time. And then what I found after in the last little while, I've been diving into a lot, some counseling, a lot of reading. You mentioned Brene Brown, Gabby Bernstein, Dr. Joe Dispenza, all these people, Lewis Howes, which I know you know. It's really interesting because I listen to these things and I go on my walks and I have time to focus on them. Four things will come up when I'm listening to these. Okay, this is great for me. Oh, I can apply this to this person I was just with. I can apply it to the next person and still caring about how I can apply it to someone else. But it's I have to realize, step back and go, this is for me. Or, oh my God, this is so overwhelming. And it even pushes me farther down. Like I'm not afraid. It's just I don't know how. So those are things, and I don't know which way it's going to come. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I can relate to this. I think I'll reference this. So like, you knew Sharmila before you knew me, and Shar and I would say in the first like 3 4 years, we were not in necessarily a super serious relationship. We were just having fun together. That's not to say that either one of us was seeing other people, because we weren't. But by the time we started to get serious about our relationship and then see it evolve over time, and then all these life experiences happened, I know I remembered when I started going down a reflective personal journey as well, like consuming information, starting to think differently, changing my beliefs, like challenging my beliefs. My first default was, I need Shar to listen to this. And I kind of forced it on her, which was not effective at all. If anything, it was almost like a massive resistance that I came up against of like, her kind of taking a position of like, are you saying I'm broken? Like, why are you trying to push this on me? Right. Like, as opposed to allowing her to see me create change in my own life. And then that become the thing that actually makes her want to change with me. And I say change, but I mean more like just evolve, right? Like just evolve and be more aware of where we're hurting ourselves and the underlying roots of why that is, because usually it's a childhood thing, right? It's not something that just happened last week. That's the story we tell ourselves. It's usually something from our
Well, it's a
childhood.
coping mechanism amongst other ones that are quite destructive. Just briefly, when I was put up for adoption, so to speak, I went into foster care, which I found out until my parents came forward, or were told that this kid was here, and they came and picked me up, so to speak. But I've learned through this counseling that the crucial part is when you're born and you got that 12 inches, and then from birth to your mother, and then have that taken immediately and put into someone else's care for a year, and then again taken away. Now these are things I'm looking into as to seeking validation, wanting to give to others, and insecure about who I am. And I'm facing that now as an adult. So part of my story is like, okay, they're all there. I want to help people. They're all these. Everyone has issues. It's just a matter of managing them to be able to, either for a job, a relationship, to walk down the street, for many, many reasons, to manage those so that you can get forward for yourself. Having said that, this is what my purpose of being here and talking about it and being helpful to others Whereas I'm not going to change. My counselor said, "Don't change. You're a great guy, but
Yeah.
careful where you put it."
Yeah.
So this is kind of part of talking with you and coming forward, and I have to be very careful because I don't want to. I have utmost respect for everyone I've talked about and are talking about, and I don't want to trigger things for them either, right?
I think that's an important part of what we're talking about here. And ultimately, every discussion that I have for this podcast, too, is that it's really empowering for the person that's coming to share their story, knowing that by speaking about it and having it be something that's in a public space, right? That you now open yourself up to possibilities and potential criticisms and everything that come with it, right? And there's a massive fear around that for most people that make them never want to do it because, like you've said a few times, like I know who Michael Graham is at his heart, like because I've seen it, I've experienced it. You've been that person, like you've opened up your place to me and Shard numerous times when we come up to Whistler, and I know the kind of relationship that you have with Sharmila, where you guys have some very really deep conversations about life, like not just surface level stuff. And by you coming here to have that conversation, it just opens up possibility is the way that I see it, because you have this heart to you that wants to give and wants to help people. And if you don't have a platform to be able to say that out loud, then the only people that can feel your impact that you can create are the ones that are closest to you. And therefore, it's almost like robbing people of your gifts. You know what I mean?
It's not a selfish thing. A lot of people would interpret that, or some people would interpret this as selfish things. By default, I've been in these relationships, and it even goes back to former relationships that I ran away from because it's like, oh my God, they can't know this about me, or I'm not good enough for them because it seems like they've got their life together better than mine. I don't want to be vulnerable. But that's what relationships are, allowing vulnerabilities to come forward. And through my life and where I am now, some of these relationships had substantial age differences of younger. And it's not that I looked for them. It's just that that's what it's been. So here I am at my age now dealing with this. So it's my journey. How would I expect them to come along with the journey where I am, because they still have their life to live, right? And have these experiences to draw from later to overcome their situations, you know what I mean? Or live their life. I changed from when I was in my 30s to where I am now. And it's there's a lot of things that happen in your life through that. So, there was great things we did together, and it wasn't just because of, it was just those relationships happened.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of perspective that happens as you start to get on every 5-10 years type thing, where you look back and think about the things that used to stress you out and think like, really? Like that used to
Well, I
stress
try
me
to get
out.
online with you today here.
And that's a great example, right? Like we were running into some tech issues and stuff. And like I was telling you, and this, the only way to get through all of these things is to actually go through it and know that on the other side, you don't die. You actually become empowered by going through the pain of experiencing everything, right? It's like working out, right? The working out analogy is always the best, is that people make a decision of like, I'm going to change. And then they start doing push-ups. And the next day they're like, what the hell? Like, where's the six pack? Where's the rip? It's like, it's about the journey. And you know what? It's going to hurt on the way too.
People want in this society want immediate pleasure, immediate satisfaction. As I said, both my birth parents were married about 67 years, and my parents were married 50. It's never been an easy journey, and a lot of things are disposable. Oh, they upset me today. I'll find someone that doesn't upset me tomorrow. But if you don't take care of your things, these patterns repeat themselves. It's just a matter of time. And going from one to another relationship doesn't solve the problem. It only just delays it, unless you you can look at yourself and take time to look at yourself and open vulnerabilities. And some people like that to do that by themselves because they want to present themselves in a manner that has no vulnerabilities and has no weaknesses. In most cases, they're quite plain as day. The more you try and hide them. So, these are all thoughts that I have, and I want to try and continue forward with being a better person for me and for those people that are in my life.
Well, I've found that vulnerability can be somebody's greatest strength if you allow it to, right? So if you frame it as no, it's a sign of weakness, then of course that's the story you're going to tell yourself. And you mentioned something earlier too. I didn't want to interrupt you, but the idea of like selfishness. Have you ever heard of Sadhguru? Are you familiar with Sadhguru? I'll send you some info about him, and then I'll link it up afterwards in this too. But he's this East Indian guy. His name's Sadhguru, so it just happens to be guru in the name. But he's literally like one of these gurus, and he's very, very well known. Like he's got a massive YouTube channel, and he's got this big white beard. He literally looks like the Indian Santa kind of thing, right? And he's got a crazy infectious laugh. And he was on an interview with Matthew McConaughey actually, because Matthew McConaughey is doing a podcast now because he launched a book last year completely virtually. He didn't do any kind of tours or anything. He just got on the circuit and whatnot. But he was asking him about selfishness versus selflessness, right? And I don't want to butcher exactly what he said, but basically it was to the idea of like selfishness is actually the most selfless thing that we can do. Because when you are selfish about your commitment to your own journey and your identification of who you are and what makes it up and the stories we choose to believe and the challenging of those and how you can constantly become the greatest version of yourself, that's the greatest thing you could ever do to help other people. But it has this position of like, yeah, but you're selfish because it's all about you. So it's a really interesting mind game, like when I first heard that, I was like, huh, that's a really interesting way to put
Kind
that,
of like a
right?
mentorship, kind of like do this and you know you'll be fine, kind of thing. And it's a way I think that the story is presented. Kind of like if beg to differ, but it's like if like I'm on my journey and my partners are on theirs, and trying to impose my journey on them is selfish on my behalf. Thinking, well, I'm this age and you should listen to this, but everyone has their approach to their own journeys, and not listening and not applying to, not really listening to what they're asking for or indications of where they are, and instead of drawing from kind of where they are to where you may have been at that time, or instead of like the wisdom you have, taking apply it in ways that is helpful, you know. And there's reasons that they're with the person as well, whatever their purpose is of that, or their connection to that is, and trying to get through their journey as well from whatever things that have affected their life.
Yeah, we all have those things that we need to look deep inside, and some people don't want to go there, and either because they're not ready, or they're fearful of it, or they just don't want to see the truth. I know with Sharmila, like she's done the deep work, like she's dove in herself too, along with me, and there's definitely been times in our 10 years together where I've sent over a video and said you should go watch this, or like enrolled her into a program, and there was a bit of resistance of like, hey, don't project your thing onto me, that's not my journey, that's yours. And I've had to really kind of wrap my head around that too, because I have a tendency to want to fix people and things as well. It's been a really eye opener for me to realize that the more I can just be an example. It's like raising our kids too, right? I can tell them what to do, but if they see me do it, it's going to land 10 times more. And I'm very conscious of that because it only takes one time raising your voice or slamming a door to undo 10 things that we're loving and, you know, getting on their level and breathing with them when they're having panic attacks at the age of 3. So, and I feel like it's a constant learning process for me still, right? Like to have to work on myself to be very self-aware of
Like
those
the
moments.
process, so be willing to learn from it.
Yeah.
Um, who knew at this at 54 that this is it's not so-called midlife crisis, but obviously it's a bit of a crisis about how to readjust yourself at an age where you're so kind of stuck in your ways. And in my business, in the hospitality business, I work for, as I said, a great restaurateur, highly respected, and but ran it kind of like small business. And then all of a sudden, you're thrust into the corporate part of it, where you never had to have those skills. So I was busy enough running the job that I had that they didn't. It wasn't necessary, so why bother? It's too busy, and so on and so forth. And these skills that I now need, I'm catching up. But my skills are on the floor with the customer. So I have to remember that, remind me of that, and just because there's the value behind that, huge value, especially in the hospitality business. So I tend to push things off due to like panic and everything of who I am, and then stressed out like today with getting online with you, and you know, just these are the mannerisms I want to change so that my life becomes easier and to be able to categorize them so that the pile isn't huge. You just take from the top, then you take the next, and then the next, and all of a sudden there's no pile. I can do that at work, but I need to do that with my own personal self.
Yeah, it's a self-awareness game, right? And it's like when I think about what you do, it's a people business. Like the ins and outs of the restaurant business and how to run it and financially make it profitable and all that kind of stuff. It all comes down to the people relationship skills, right? And I think that's the thing that I think you're very aware of, but I also think at times too, you look back and you're like, does he really know how exceptionally good he is at that? Like, it's just kind of an intuitive skill, right? But this is some of the blessings, again, that have come from probably your childhood, even, right? Like knowing that you want to just make sure that everybody's good. Like, that's always the aura that I get from you when you're running a restaurant is like, Mike's basically, the dad of the restaurant. Like he's there. You good? You good? You good? Let me bring over this dessert. Let me, you know what I mean? It's an experience that you can create.
Especially with some of these situations I've been in, it's looked at differently because people don't know who I am. The perception, in a world that's selfish, and people don't understand what you just explained to me about this Mr. Guru. That it's not really serve. I'm not doing it to really serve myself. I get a connection with people and I care about them, and through my life and through who I am, most of those connections that have been strong have been with situations that people think it's an ulterior motive, whatever the case. But I like to help people, and if I can do that in a manner like opening up myself to you and I guess the world, it's pretty vulnerable to do that.
It's a step in that direction of like creating the life that you ultimately know you deserve, right?
No, but everyone deserves.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah, no matter what their challenges are in life and the patterns that they repeat and don't understand why the things aren't happening the way they want them to. You have to step outside of the box and have a look at them. And sometimes it's too intimidating for some. It's feast or famine or sink or swim, right?
Yep. Absolutely.
So this is part of my journey.
Yeah, for sure. So we've got this lightning round thing that I do, and it's not intended to have like one word answers or anything, but I'm going to ask you a series of questions here that all kind of have a similar theme, and I'll get you to answer them with whatever comes to mind. So, all right. So this is the power of one lightning round here. So the first question I got for you is, who is one person slash mentor that has been the most influential in your life all time? Who's the one person that comes to mind?
My father,
Why is that?
um,
And which father are we talking about?
my mom and dad. My dad had passed away a couple of years ago. He never knew this. He was a very um, quiet man. He was very carnal, but you know, I discovered this later because when he didn't say much, but when he said something, you knew you had to listen, and it would be important. And he was a great husband, and a great example of what someone should be. And I just, when you're young and you're doing your thing and you don't realize it until you get to a point where you're vulnerable and you're in a situation drawn off of that. So
That's a good one. I love it. And I hear that a lot about parents and stuff, but obviously it's extra special, I think, for you knowing that you lost him recently as well. On the same line, who is the one person / mentor that you believe is the most influential in your life right now at this moment? It could be somebody you're consuming their content. It could be somebody like physically in your life right now. Is there anybody that comes to mind?
not one particular person, just a group of solid friends in my life that have known me and just been there. I can't really nail it down to one. It's just, I always say sometimes you pick up a phone after 20 years of not talking to anyone, and the subject is exactly the same as it was 20 years ago. Not why didn't you call me? Why didn't you do this? But it's just a group of very close friends, and they know who they are.
Perfect. Love it. Um, is there one philanthropic cause that means the most to you and why? Anything that you donate your time or your money to?
I hate to say this, but not at the moment. It's more for me, no, it's just I haven't, I've found a cause that I know that if I was to donate would actually go to where it should be. I'd rather go on a lot of these things are masked by people making money off of it and not going to those that need it. So I've been very skeptical and very cautious and not proceeded through that. Maybe it's a pessimistic look at things, but um, you know, uh, not at the moment. No.
I just so you know, I can totally relate to that. And the reason why I asked that question is that I had it asked to me about 4 months ago on a podcast, and I went, "No, there's nothing." And then I felt this immediate guilt where I was like, am I selfish? And then I said out loud to the person, I was like, you know what? I've honestly just been so consumed with trying to work on myself that the idea of like stretching myself to help others just seemed out of reach. And she actually said to me too, she's like, well, $5 can go a long ways in on a consistent basis for a nonprofit if there's something that you're passionate about. And anyways, the only reason I say it is that it just brought up all of these thoughts of like, you know what? Me and Shar said that we were going to give back to the children's hospital. And I like within the next 3 days, I just set up like a recurring payment. And it was only like $25 or something, right? But it was just this conscious awareness. And it's interesting related to what we were just talking about the idea of like selfishness is like taking care of yourself first. And it's actually the most selfless thing that we can do. Yet there's always a way to frame what we're doing. And do we have something in us to give more? And anyways, it's always a really interesting, reflective question. But I feel the same way. For the longest time, I was like, well, I'm not just donating money to some random thing that's just going to, I don't know where that money's going, right? And then therefore, I just never even got involved.
I think I give to myself, I can give better to others.
Yeah.
So there's your answer there.
Perfect. What is one thing that you're most grateful for right now?
My life, the people that have been in it, the journey I'm on, and the awareness of wanting to be vulnerable and looking at things that are challenging and challenge and starting to challenge myself. Whether that's a process that's some days I think is overwhelming, some days is too challenging, sometimes I run from, but just the mindset of, and then I can serve better, you know, to those that need it, you know.
Yeah. Well, we never even talked about this. I forgot, and it just didn't come up yet. But of course, you had the bike accidents like a month ago too. That like talk about a perfect storm of craziness going on in your life all at once, right? To like feel this emotional pain, but then the physical pain of like literally like going into your handlebars and
It's been a tough year, commuting back and forth for a job and staying with someone else and not being at your home. And then on top of that, was in a car accident in January, and that kind of shook me up a bit. And
mm, I
that,
wasn't aware of that.
my car was a write-off, and I came out better than I did in my bike accident for sure. And then just the uncertain, I'm a person who likes, things in the row, and just the upheaval of back and forth and back and forth, and having COVID and that on there, and these relationships and them triggering a lot of things with all these other things happening. It's, just hanging on. So, just getting out there and listening to these things and trying to not listen to what your mind says in idle moments. That's the big thing.
Mm.
Convincing.
Well, that's a great answer. Grateful to be here.
Yeah.
Like literally just grateful to be alive.
Yeah, for sure.
And for the journey.
That's what I'm grateful for.
Perfect. What is one thing that you're most curious about right now? Look, what is something that you are maybe feeling like you don't fully understand, but you're willing to go down the path of discovery?
Me, simply, and I don't say this in a bad way, but finding out who I am, in due time to be a better me, for other people. And as you said, if you're selfish with being me, I let a lot of boundaries down trying to appease people in my life. And after that happens for a long time, you just kind of just, you don't feel good about it, and that's just keeping your boundaries and being better for me, being a better me. And when you're a better you, you're better for others. And some people don't care about that, but the ones that are important in your life, or that are on the same length, will recognize those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Without even having to say it out loud, they'll know. Last question, Mike. What is one thing that scares you right now that you know you need to face with bravery?
As I said earlier, I'm not afraid. I just don't know how. What scares me is figuring out those hows. Um, People, lean on some friends and drive them nuts, I'm sure sometimes, but that's what I'm afraid of. Trying to figure out these things and overcoming things, and being able to overcome those things. That's what I'm most afraid of. Because I got a lot to offer, you know, and this is a platform that I'd like to continue on and hope. Someone asked me the other day, "What's your dream job?" And I said, "I got two. I want to be on TED Talk circuit and hopefully bring these awarenesses to people that don't think they have them, or just let them think about it, and also be a photographer for National Geographic. And both both those things will enable me to fulfill both my passions, or all my three passions: travel, people, and just serving.
Yeah. Well, I love it. That's and I just want to acknowledge you for, the honesty, the vulnerability of this conversation, and also remind you too that like I don't think anybody that's in your circle that you're now tapping into for that support is feeling as though you're a taker. If anything, you've been a giver for so long in your life that you're literally just cashing in the relationship equity that you've built over decades and decades with people. And I've seen it. And I can say that honestly because I know the relationship that you have with Sharmila and how much she really cares about you and the kind of conversations that I know. Like, I don't know the details of what you guys talk about because I leave her alone. I'm like, go talk to Mike. But, that community that you've built is not by accident, right? Like it's there because of all of that selflessness that you've built up over the years in building relationships, like real relationships with people. So just wanted to acknowledge you for that
Well,
and for
thank you.
having
Yeah,
this chat.
just who I am.
Absolutely. It is. It is just who you are. And you're learning to love yourself for that as well, which is awesome. So, how can people connect with you, Mike? What's the best way for people to get in touch? Somebody watches this, they're like, I feel like I need to reach out to this guy. He said something, it resonated with me. What's the best channels to kind of connect with you?
They can, as much as some days I don't like it, they can connect me through Facebook or Instagram. I think people get consumed by that, but I promote my photography through that, and this is not a platform to promote that by all means, but you get an essence of a person through how they present themselves in social media during stages of their life, and I can get into, I can be reached through those avenues, and through maybe more discussions with you that go public as well, and part of my journey. I'm not afraid to talk about it.
Perfect. Yeah. No, and that's always the start of it, right? Like you've just put out into the space about doing a TED talk and to share your story with the intent on serving and empowering other people to, as we started this whole talk with, where one day you will tell your story of how you overcame what you went through and it'll be somebody else's survival guide. And that's the whole purpose of this, right? So, and this is never a one and done kind of deal. So you and I will definitely have another chat because, your life's going to evolve. This podcast is going to evolve. And at the end of the day too, and both of our kids, Bodie and Logan, we got photo. We'll link that up too in some of the post-production on this. But I want Logan and Bodie watching this years later and going, oh, look, it's Uncle Mike and Daddy. What were they talking about? And be able to be inspired by like the power of vulnerability and authenticity, because that's the underlying real driver for me in all of this. So,
well, I got to thank yourself and guys like yourself that are doing this, and it's there to help everyone, and it's an amazing thing. So I appreciate you having me on, and look forward to many, many more discussions and furthering this kind of life for me and for helping people through things or just drawing from it. They are a bunch of rubbish, but look at these guys, but there's those ones that's going to help.
Absolutely. It will resonate. It always does. Yeah. Right place, right time. So amazing, Mike. Thanks so much again for this.
Thank you. I look forward to hearing from you.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of The Trevor Turnbull Show. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please consider subscribing on my YouTube channel and on your favorite podcast platform, and leave me a review. I'd love to hear from you. Now, until next time, remember, today is a beautiful day of opportunity. Trust that you're exactly where you're supposed to be right now. So be grateful, be curious, and be brave.